Hey there! So today I wanted to talk about the Fundamentals of Engineering exam. So the Fundamentals of Engineering exam, or as we engineers call it, the FE, is the first step towards becoming a professional engineer. Usually you'll take it within 12 months of graduating from an ABET accredited school or even towards the tail end of your senior year. The test itself is administered by NCEES and it costs about $175 to register. So on to the test itself. You can register to take the FE in 7 different disciplines: Chem, Civil, Electrical and Computer, Environmental, Industrial and Systems, Mechanical, and Other, which incorporates agricultural, aero, and the like. Each discipline has its own sections, but there is quite a bit of overlap, and each section will have a different amount of questions. Overall, the test itself has 110 questions, and it lasts about 6 hours. You do have a half-hour break in between 2 sections, and you do decide when to take that break. But once you hit that break, you can't go back to the first section to check any of those answers. So you do want to be aware of that when you take that break. So how do you study for the FE? The big thing is prep materials. Figure out what's available to you first and foremost, because it can get kind of expensive if you're purchasing a bunch of those. For me, I did purchase the prep book that comes with the environmental engineering exam, which was really useful for me, but I did find a lot of different resources online as well. So I mentioned before, there is quite a bit of overlap between the different tests. So for example, I found engineering economics tests and mathematics and fluid mechanics and dynamics and the other areas, even though I couldn't find environmental engineering study materials. So I really liked the civil and mechanical tests that I did find online. One of the big things is just to determine what areas you're struggling with and focus on those instead of just repeating the things that you already kind of understand. So for me, fluid mechanics and dynamics is always my really hard area, so I did take a lot of time just to go through the motions, understand what's behind those questions, and figure out how to solve those, and also in a timely manner. One of the big things is to also get used to the reference handbook that NCEES provides. You'll have that when you're actually in the testing environment, and it's really helpful to understand where you're going to find those equations and those helpful hints. The other thing is to just take the test in the testing environment you'll have. So the FE exam is a computer-based test, which means you'll be taking it on a computer. A lot of us are used to taking it with pen and paper, and actually going in and having just the computer is very different, and it can just be a lot harder if you're not used to it. So for me, taking it on my computer and simulating the test environment did wonders. So my actual tips for taking the FE: first off, figure out which discipline you're going to take it in. Once you get your EIT, it actually doesn't say which discipline you took, and that discipline doesn't have to stay the same when you go for your PE. One of the big things is figuring out which areas you're most comfortable in and which areas you want to work in and are used to. So I took it in environmental engineering, but while I was studying, I realized I could take it in chemical or civil, since those are the areas I was actively working in after graduation and some of the things I studied during college. The other thing is to take it as soon as possible, both because it really starts the clock towards becoming a professional engineer. You do have to wait 4 years for that. And also, the likelihood of passing on your first chance goes down after a year. Part of that is because it's just harder to study and remember those things. And also, if you're towards the end of college or right after graduation, those things are fresh in your mind. You don't do them the same way when you're out in the workforce, so it's just a different way of thinking about them. So it's definitely much better to take it as soon as possible. For me, I did take it a year after graduation because I was traveling so much my first year out that it was hard to figure out where I would even be to schedule the test. But I struggled a lot with remembering how I studied best, and that was kind of the big hurdle I had. Plus, you have to make time to study when you have a full-time job, and that just means really working hard on time management. In the long term, you'll find out around 7 to 10 days after you take the test whether or not you passed. Like I mentioned, It's a 70 to 80% pass rate for first-time test takers who graduated less than 12 months ago. If you do have to retake it, you can take it once every 2-month period and up to 3 times a year. I was very stressed out and I was sure that I wasn't going to pass the first time, so I put it off and put it off to keep studying. I wish I had just taken it right away because then I could have just retaken it if it didn't work out. But I have really bad test anxiety, so I had to deal with that. The big thing for me was just time management and figuring out how to study best, how to pace myself through the actual test itself, since I would get anxious in the test environment, and trying to calm down and think rationally was a little bit harder for me. Once you take the test and pass, you have to wait 4 years before you can go for your PE exam, and that includes post-college experience. Like I said, it doesn't have to be the same area you took your EIT, but usually you'll have been working 4 years in that field. So at the end of the day, if you do want to become a professional engineer, which has its own perks and benefits and also is just its own career path, you do end up taking the FE pretty early on, so it is a really important aspect. For me, the big thing was just I psyched myself up so hard and was so stressed out about it, and I was so worried that I wasn't going to pass. And I realize now that was imposter syndrome and just test anxiety. I think that I would have done much better if I focused more on just calming myself down and thinking things through a little bit more clearly. I think at the end of the day, it can be really hard to see things in perspective when you still have so much ahead of you, but it was actually so relieving when I passed, and there was just a feeling of what's next, because taking the FE was such a big step for me. And now I'm looking towards grad school and things like that, but because I have my EIT, I don't necessarily need that. It's more of I would like to continue education, but I'm still on the trajectory to get my professional engineering license, which is really exciting, and I'll do a whole video kind of on what that looks like and why people might choose taking their FE exam and trying to get their professional engineering license, because I think that really comes down to what you want out of your career. And again, that might change quite a bit after you graduate and even once you're well into your career. So go ahead and leave me a question about what you'd like to see going into the FE, going into the PE. I'm going to do some more videos about practice prep and just tips on how to prepare for it, because I think it's really important to see those questions, think about how to work through them, and just feel confident that you're able to solve them. Confidence is key at the end of the day. So stay tuned, and I'll see you next time.